Thank you. So what this is...
So, sorry, before you start, in the future, I'll allow this tonight, but in the future, you absolutely, or any trustee needs to email someone like this ahead of time. You know, you can't circumvent the entire agenda process to do your own presentation. And this should be done by, you know, the official update be done by a member of the village staff. So, you know, you're free to make the presentation tonight, but for anybody watching, this is by no means an official update from the village. This is Trustee Goldberg's personal opinion of an update. This has not been approved or vetted by village staff or by the Board of Trustees. Wow. So there's confusion by members of the public sometimes. So, you know, again, free to make the presentation, but this is completely your personal opinion, which is you're free to make.
Okay. Well, thank you for the lecture, and just like the update on the village website about the Sandy results was your opinion. So anyway, what this is an update from a presentation I did in December of 2011, and just updates the date and the amounts. There won't be any surprises here. So the goal is to share a public update on the progress to date since the last time this was given, December of 2011. And ideally, this should be done at least twice a year. For what it's worth, we've been told, you know, several times in the past 4 months that the construction manager is going to be here. For a variety of reasons, they haven't been here. So the public has a right to know where we are with this project and what it's costing. So since the last update, this is again just an inventory of the things that have been done. We all know this, but the public may not be following. One of the items that we talked about last time, again back in 2011, was getting a construction manager on board. So last March, a contract was awarded to J. Shapiro and Associates in the amount of $207,816. So that's been completed.
What are you reading from? It's not up there.
Oh, I'm sorry, I'm advancing on my screen. Sorry, Mark, I apologize. Thank you, Mark.
Thank you.
My apologies. The construction drawings, 90%, I believe, is my understanding, they were complete by end of last year, and obviously going to wait until the asbestos abatement is complete to completely finalize those construction drawings. Relocation site, at one point we had finalized, quote unquote, a decision to move to mobile offices on 2nd Street. However, we're now reconsidering that and considering vacant retail or commercial space on South Orange Avenue, as the administrator said earlier. HVAC, again, a decision was reached since we discussed this last, to go with geothermal as the source. A change order for $53,870 was issued to the architect. And with respect to asbestos assessment and abatement, obviously there was a need to update the assessment and the need for specifications. So a contract was awarded for $17,750 for the assessment. A contract for $63,140 was awarded for the preparation of specs, and the abatement itself, contract will follow with a separate bid and contract. And Mr. Lewis, please, if there's anything I say here that you disagree with, please chime in. But I believe this is all factual stuff. It's just putting it all in one nice package. As far as the timeline, these were some tasks that, again, we talked about last time. That first column was the baseline, what we had said in December of 2011, what we were targeting. Again, there were a lot of things that we know now that we didn't know then, so some of these dates have slipped quite a bit and some things have happened. The schematic drawings have been completed. The construction drawings still need to be done, as I said. Construction manager was put out to bid and awarded, so that completed. But the construction bid itself and the construction contract and the start of construction, when we first did this back in December of 2011, we thought that was going to happen by middle of 2012. Now, I guess best guess of that all to start is probably third quarter of 2013. Relocation, again, the original baseline that we had identified, this is when we were talking about trailers and we were going to have to go out to bid and improve the site and award the contract. None of that's applicable anymore because we're not going to mobile trailers, but clearly staff still needs to be relocated. At one point last year we thought that was going to occur by second quarter of 2012. We're now talking about probably realistically third quarter of 2012. By third quarter I mean sometime between June, July and August, sometime over the summer. This is the exact same thing, but just representing it visually. The gray boxes and bars represent kind of what the baseline was. The dark blue bars represent kind of where we are today. Again, this is a point in time. I'm not saying this is the be-all, end-all, but this is where we are as of best guess as of what we know right now. Potentially construction starting in the middle of next year. That 2-year time window is I'm assuming a constant. So I would anticipate it would wrap up in the middle of 2015 with staff being back by end of 2015. So obviously, big question, where does all this mean with respect to cost? Well, we talked about last time, in 2009, the estimate was $3.9 million. In 2011, we were at $4.2 million, including the asbestos abatement. The most recent estimate is $5.2 million, which includes the geothermal and the sprinklers, but not the asbestos abatement. That was taken out of the estimate. And then other fees, such as the architect, construction manager, relocation, furniture, signage, landscaping, etc., are all additional. So again, comparing the baseline where we were in December of 2011, we thought the overall project was about $5.2 million. We're now looking at approximately $7.1 million with what we know today. And again, that's pre-bid. We haven't gone out to bid yet, so it could come in more, it could come in less. This doesn't account for the actual moving or build out of any space. These are just based on numbers that we know. The construction manager number was a 2-year contract, but being that that started last year and that the construction project is scheduled to go for another 2 years beyond this, that number is probably going to increase. There'll probably need to be a change order for the construction manager, because that 2-year contract will easily go to be a 3-year contract. The asbestos abatement, we talked about those numbers before, and so just so people have an understanding of the ballpark of what we're talking about, at roughly $7 million project. The geothermal and sprinklers are included in that number, but things like landscaping or any change orders or signage, any unknowns that come about obviously are not included. Funding, we had previously allocated $5 million in capital funding. The New Jersey Historic Trust grant for $669K had been awarded, and then we obviously need to figure out where the difference is going to come from, or potentially value engineer the project down to get it below that $7 million estimate. And that's it. And then just kind of summarizing, based on where we are, what needs to be done next at a high level, and this is just for the benefit of the public. The asbestos abatement specs, as Mr. Lewis said, are underway. Those need to be completed. Village Hall obviously needs to be vacated. The move to temporary offices, wherever that may be. The asbestos abatement contract has to be put out to bid and awarded. Construction documents need to be completed, and then the construction project needs to be put out to bid. Again, not necessarily in that order, but those are kind of the high-level, big ideas that are yet to come. So again, just to be realistic, I know we've talked about perhaps construction starting this summer, and I think being that it's April now, that's possible. But again, if you mean construction by the asbestos abatement, that could certainly get underway. But that's still a short window of time. It's only 2 months to vacate this, to find alternate space, to build out that space, and to vacate this building. So, just so people have an understanding, a realistic expectation of where we are and what we know at this time. Again, very subject to change. Who knows, 2, 3, 4 years from now when the project is long since over, I just think this is a useful exercise to look back and say, okay, this is what we knew then, and here's what it turned out to be. Hopefully it's better, and just thought it's worth taking that checkpoint in time. That was it. Does anyone have any questions or corrections or comments?
I should just point out that there have been different reasons for some of the delays, but part of it, I know, but I just want to point out, to make a public disclosure, that part of the delay was when the prior village administrator left. We did put stuff on hold until we got to the point when we said to him, to Mr. Lewis, get the house in order for the first 3 months and then go back to the project. So there was probably a 6 to 8 month delay due to the changeover in administration.
Yeah. And that, again, this isn't about pointing fingers. I'm not casting blame.
I know, but
it's just a point in time.
The interpretation could be that.
Yep, wasn't casting blame.
Well, the other part to it is, one, I would wait for the project manager. We hired a project manager specifically to give us the kinds of estimates that we're looking for. I would look forward to his estimate. The other is that we put in a geothermal system because the operating expenses will be significantly reduced in the future. Those are decisions that the board made as we went along. I mean, that's a value engineering process that we go through.
And again, Howard, I'm not criticizing, or I'm simply stating the facts, that people just should understand where the project is at this moment in time and why it is why it is.
But the point is that you put up, geothermal was put in. The point is that it was done based upon...
I wasn't criticizing or making commentary.
I think the point that Trustee Levison makes, which is a good one, is that you talk about costs rising, quote unquote, on the project, when in fact if you look at 5 years or 10 years or 20 years, the cost may actually be less. So although this may, quote unquote, be factual in your opinion, it's not factual unless you're taking into account a 5 or 10 or 20 year outlook, which is the outlook that was used to make the decision about geothermal. So that's why we have professionals, project managers and construction managers that are going to come in and give the official report about this project, and they will discuss those sort of details, because having the public understand this process is very important, but making sure that people understand, well, $200,000, for example, I'm pulling a number out of thin air, spent now, but that if it's saving $50,000 a year, it's actually a cost reduction for the taxpayers over a period of time. And this presentation obviously doesn't show those sort of details.
It's not about spin, Alex. It's about truth, about the facts, period.
Well, I would have a couple comments. One, in terms of the funding sources on this page, there is an additional, I think it's $175,000 Department of Interior grant that would be added onto that. And I would also note that there's $5 million that was recently allocated. Some of the original design costs and stuff, including a portion of the architect's money, was from even older and has already been spent from older ordinances. That doesn't change the overall cost, but in terms of where the funding source, the shortfall, if you will, would not be, one would be offset by that interior grant. Two, some of the expenses were already charged to older ordinances. The other point on the cost estimate summary, on this page, you actually, it's not really apples to apples, because on the next page, you do reflect that in the number in the 13 does include the geothermal and the sprinkler, which by my count, that's $423,000. That was not in the baseline. That needs to be added back in, which would then bring your $5,000,002 up to $5,660,000 in terms of comparing the two. And then the final point I would point out is, candidly, the December 2000 line I wasn't part of. I don't know who was the process, based on when I did get in and have turned my attention to this. I think that was way too premature to be really releasing the scheduling or the cost estimates, at that level of detail from an architect, or just that. They're sort of back of the envelope, and that's why you actually hire a cost estimator to get a realistic cost estimate. And that's the risk and you have to balance it. How much do we go public with? Because then you set yourself up for somehow you've blown up the budget when it was a back of the napkin sort of architect's estimate to begin with. And the proof is in the fact that if that was sufficiently accurate, you wouldn't pay money for a cost estimator to do an actual cost estimate. So there certainly has been some cost, some growth. And as far as the timing, and again, I wasn't part of this, I wasn't put together, but I know I got here in first quarter 12, and if somebody was thinking in December of 2011 that the trailers were already going to be going out the bid in first quarter 12, I don't know what that was based on, because what I saw was nowhere near most of these, at least when I walked in February. Now maybe this was based on, and maybe that hiatus of not having anyone here, but certainly that's when I got here, and I know that these were not really in a position to be done. But we are, I agree with Trustee Goldberg that it's important that, particularly now that we are getting to the point where we do have realistic figures, and what I think is going to be very realistic timelines, that those be put out there and the public understand them and know where we're at and what we're getting into. Part of the process of the presentation has been a sort of thorough analysis of going back to what expenses were already paid for out of older ordinances, and more or less what expenses are remaining and what monies are remaining, since that's the real to determine the shortfall.
Yeah, and I think it's important that people look at this and this board. I won't be here, but I think as a resident, I want this board to look at it holistically. It's really easy to approve, 15,000 here, 50,000 there, 60,000 there, but when you look at it over time and you look at it in aggregate, and I think the public deserves that. It deserves to know. I mean, we had similar problems with SOPAC. It started out as 4 million, became 10 million, became 15 million. Next thing you know, you're talking real money. So I don't want the same thing to happen here. I think it's important that the holistic view and decisions are looked at that way.
Well, and hopefully when we have the construction manager come in, we can actually get a holistic view, which will look at the cost to the village over more than just this one period, and not basing our timelines off of what your last presentation said and what it says now. So I appreciate your energy and enthusiasm about doing this. Don't know why you tried to sneak this in without approaching myself, Mr. Lewis, Mr. Renda, anybody that's involved in actually managing the project on a daily basis, which is not the responsibility of an individual trustee.
It's on the agenda, Alex. If you don't like the message, I know
it's not about the message. It's not about the message. The difference is that
you're about transparency when you control the message, Alex. And this, I'm sorry, this is the truth and this is the facts. If you don't like it, that's your choice.
Well, it's your truth and it's your facts, because again, with the very specific example of the geothermal, your conclusion about the cost is wrong. You're giving a cost. You're giving a cost in 1 year. But what you may not understand, and what's important for the public to understand, is that all of us, or most of us, I think, try to look at budgeting more than just a 1 year period. It's not just about what the cost of a project is. For example, solar panels, which I'm sure you've heard of. There is an investment that you have to make in the beginning.
Can you explain to me, because I love your condescending attitude. What's a solar panel?
Well, I'll explain to you.
Tell me how it works.
So basically, it's a product that you put an investment in and save money in the long term, which is the same what geothermal does. So just so you understand, as soon to be a resident, that when you look at something,
currently a taxpayer. Thank you.
That when you look at the cost of a project like this, and you look at like the cost of something like geothermal, that there's going to be a cost savings in the long run. And I think those sort of things are important. Again, appreciate your enthusiasm. Don't appreciate the sneakiness, but
it's on the agenda.
But you didn't mention that you were going to do a presentation. You didn't check with anybody to check with some of the facts that were inaccurate.
Did you check with us to tell us there was going to be a presentation of your graphing tool? I mean, come on, you didn't tell us about your presentation.
A presentation showing someone a tool that exists on a website is different than you as a personal trustee who has no responsibility or authority over the management of an operational project, inferring your own ideas about a project and making that. Transparency is great. We both love transparency. Everybody knows that.
You love spin. I like transparency. There's a big, huge difference.
It's not worth arguing anymore. Couple meetings left, and hopefully we can move on from the politics and actually focus on doing some work at this governing body. Unless there's any other comments about this, I'd love to move on to the next item on the discussion, which is the state-issued additional retail privilege license to Giorgio's Restaurant. And I guess I will say one last thing, which is that anybody who is interested in this sort of holistic view of the project, please make sure to pay attention to the board meeting when the paid professional who manages the project is going to do a presentation, which may be exactly the same as this, but may not be.
When is he coming, this guy?
May 15th.
May 15th he's coming?
He was supposed to come in January. He was supposed to come in February. He's supposed to come every month, and he hasn't come.
Again, as I indicated, we are the two biggest sort of remaining unknowns. One relates to the asbestos and that's impact on the schedule, because that's the first step, and the asbestos cost. And we are now progressed to the point where we have the asbestos professional on board who can provide that information. So as soon as we get that, I will check tomorrow where they're at, when we will have that incorporated, and I will tomorrow check with Shapiro's office, Mr. Fritz, his availability, and we'll get them scheduled as soon as it's ready.
Yeah, it'd be great, especially now, to get them scheduled to come in and present everything else sooner rather than later. So again, moving on, state issue